I did not know there was a screensaver set for 36 minutes. And so 36 minutes into the service, it kicked in and I lost. So I'm going to try to do better this week, and hopefully I'll be able to keep this screen and that screen in sync. I did a test run, and no, it doesn't work from inside of a pew, so otherwise Vicky was going to be the one running it, but we'll see how it goes. The way of the cross. And the passage we're going to initially start out with is from Joshua chapter 24. And in the first verse of Joshua 24, it says, "Then Joshua gathered all the tribes of Israel to Shechem and called for the elders of Israel, for their heads, for their judges, and for their officers. And they presented themselves before God." And the who? All the tribes. And it was the judges, the elders, the officers. It was the people who both knew and were in power. And when I say who knew, the judges were those who had been appointed, who were young enough to have been in Egypt and seen the 10 plagues, seen the parting of the water and crossing through on dry ground, seen the pillar of cloud by day and the fire by night, their entire life almost. Because you had to be young enough to have gotten out of the 40 years in the wilderness. So they're young-ish when they got out of the wilderness. They're over 40 years old, but not as old as their parents had been who died in the wilderness. And then after getting out of the wilderness, the pillar of cloud and the pillar of fire by night are still leading them. Until the tabernacle is done away with, the cloud leads. Until they got to the promised land, manna and quail. So God was present in many ways for a long time, even when they got to the promised land. The walls of Jericho come tumbling down. They knew who led God's army. God did. Now the person that led, yes, that was Joshua. But these were people who in many ways should have known strongly the power of God in their lives. And for those that were judges, God is the one that selected those first judges. And then we have presented themselves before God. I find that an interesting phrase because these are also the people that when the law, the first 10 commandments were given, before Moses goes up on the mountainside, Moses tells the people, prepare, you're going to meet your maker today. And God declares the 10 commandments. And they're all terrified. So they heard the voice of God. These are people who really know God. So to be called to come to present themselves before God, they had a bit of an awe experience. Do we think about that, where 2 or more of us are gathered in His name? That we're gathering in His presence as well? That's something I think we all need to think about. But continuing on with verse 2. "And Joshua said to all the people, thus says the Lord God of Israel, your fathers, including Terah, the father of Abraham and the father of Nahor, dwelt on the other side of the river in old times, and they served other gods." Now, this is the interesting part about this passage, because we already know where they're at from the first verse. They're in Shechem. Shechem happens to be a very important kind of location for the Jews, going all the way back to Genesis 12, verses 6 and 7. Abram passed through the land to the place of Shechem. Verse 7, "Then the Lord appeared to Abram and said, to your descendants I will give this land." Joshua has brought the people in the promised land to the exact same spot Abraham was at. when God said, I'm giving this land to your descendants. And now, after 40 years of fighting in the promised land, they pretty much have it all. Pretty much. So in one sense, this is a reminder. God promised, God delivered. But then there's also the negative side of it. And did it not advance? I'm getting a sideways look from somebody. Is it not on Genesis 35? No? Now is it on Genesis 35? No. It is way behind me. Maybe I should try my hand out there. All right. I'm sorry. More technical difficulties. Genesis 35. Then Jacob said to his household and to all who were with him, put away the foreign gods that are among you. And Jacob hid them under the terebinth tree, which was by Shechem. Same spot. The spot where the promise was made is also the spot where Jacob had to tell his whole family, chuck the foreign gods. We bury them here. And it's in Shechem. And then we have the rest of what comes next, Joshua 24:2. I'm sorry, last line there. They served other gods back in the past. Except, why is he asking this? Joshua was a veteran leader. He led the people as a military leader. I think he was strategically planning this spot. This is the place where the promise was made. This is the place where the problem was identified. And oh, by the way, as long as we're thinking about the promise, maybe we need to take the time to think about the problem. Because yes, the people have been following God. Yes, God's been winning their battles, but there's a reason why Joshua starts this discussion off the way he does, reminding them that there was a time when it wasn't as good as what you've got right now. And that was a time when there were the other gods that weren't doing you any good anyways. This is a time to clean house. Get it in line, get it in order. So jumping down to verse 14. Now, and it didn't advance. It does not like me. It so does not like me. I'm on verse 14 now? Yes? Okay. I don't know what I'm going to do. Anyway, now therefore the Lord, fear the Lord, serve him in sincerity and in truth, and put away the gods which your fathers served on the other side of the river and in Egypt. Serve the Lord. He's bringing it up because it's still a problem. They're good and comfortable with God being the God winning the battles. And at the same time, they were still good and comfortable with hanging on to these false gods that weren't getting them anything. It's scary that they've come this far hanging on to that kind of problem. Verse 15, and if it seems evil to you to serve the Lord, choose for yourselves this day whom you will serve. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Joshua's been giving them witness the entire time. He's not been a waffle. He's been a consistent and strong leader. Even when things go wrong, where did Joshua go? He went before the Lord and said, Lord, why? And God gave him the answer. It's because of sin in the camp. And Joshua accepted that. And when God said, okay, you're going to go back into battle after you've lost, Joshua trusted God. The people followed Joshua because I guess in one sense he was the guy they could blame if it didn't go right. But they weren't a people fully committed and convicted of God. They were sort of like halfway there. The title of today's sermon, The Way of the Cross. It's not a halfway commitment kind of thing. Take up your cross daily and follow me is not a halfway kind of thing. And it doesn't sound easy. And the truth is, a lot of people will complain that, oh man, that sounds like too much. I mean, that's a cross. That thing's heavy. It's a burden. I don't need to be lugging that kind of problem around with me all the time. You can't expect somebody to do that. That's not normal. I got up there two images together because in a weird way we expect the same out of both. The football field, and yes, I'm wearing the gator tie. Sorry for those of you that are offended by that. And yes, they did lose last night. But when it comes to football, we expect them to give their all. You don't hold anything back. You leave it all on the field. And it's not just Saturday. We expect them to be practicing, giving their all, getting in shape so that on Saturday we've got an awesome contest. We expect. And then there's Veterans Day, which was yesterday. Veterans. Those who, okay, I'm not going to lump them together because it's equal, but it's similar. First responders. People who make a commitment to put their life on the line when it counts. And I'm including the medical crowd in that, because there are sometimes the bullets are flying when they're doing their jobs as well. People who understand what commitment really means. You don't sign up for the military for the fun of it. You sign up because you have a belief. You don't go into law enforcement for the fun of it. You've got to have a conviction about following through, because one day following through might mean the end of your life. We understand that level of commitment, that level of conviction, the willingness to take it on in certain areas, but not in mine. Really? We hold this up as the right kind of standard. They're the ones that have the right kind of stuff. If we're not holding up to that standard, what kind of stuff we have? The less right? No. We get that if you want to do well at work, you work hard at it. You want to become a lawyer, you work hard at it. You want to become a doctor, you work hard at it. You want to raise up kids the right way, you work hard at it. Because kids aren't easy. And there's a chuckle, because somebody's in agreement. They're not easy. And even when they're adults, they're still my kids. It's still not easy. Hasn't quit. We get it when we want to get it. But we need to be getting it for God. Matthew 16:24. Then Jesus said to his disciples, if anyone desires to come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. It's not the only time it's there in Scripture. He says it on 2 different occasions. We've got it recorded in 5 different verses in the gospel accounts. You get the idea that it was serious if it's there 5 different times? Take up your cross and follow me obviously doesn't mean we're grabbing a hold of a hunk of wood. It does mean we are purposeful, like wearing this tie. I put it on with a purpose. Intentional. I am going to do not just the right purpose, but the intention to follow through with. Because if the only time the quarterback bothers to show up for the game is on Saturday, doesn't show up for practice, doesn't show up for the team meetings, doesn't show up for the exercise and stuff, is he going to do well? Well, duh, no. If the only time we show up is Sunday, spiritually, are we going to do well? And the answer is still the same. Duh, no. We're called to be, as we've already said a couple weeks ago, a different people, a holy people, a people separate from the world. We're called to live by a different standard. Except that standard is ingrained in our society in ways we forget about. Because we're, oh yeah, yelling at them when they're on that football field for the standard we expect to see. And we're so thankful for them, whether it be the military or the first responders, for that standard that we hold to be so important. Can we be doing any less for God? Because the truth of it is, we sing the song, the way of the cross leads home. But there's a qualifier. It leads if we choose to follow. If we choose to act. If all I do is sit where I am, what good does it do that it leads and I'm not following? It doesn't. We can know the answer. We can have the conviction of the rightness of the answer. But if we're not going to follow through, if we're not going to take up, if we're not going to carry, we are not going to get home. That's an ugly truth. I say ugly only because what the opposite of getting home is pretty nasty. It all begins with we choose. We choose to take up the cross and follow, or we don't. The player who sits on the side and says, "Go team," and gets called in. Well, why are you calling me, coach? Didn't have his head in the game. Didn't have the right expectation. I can't do that. I'm not. No. We know how they are in football. Oh yeah, send me. Is that how it is in church? We need to be looking for the opportunity to be that active part always. I'm Mr. IT, and yes, I've blown it a lot in IT as far as getting things going at times. But along with being Mr. IT, I'm also the guy in a master's program working on Masters of Ministry. I've been in a pulpit for the past 30 years plus, that whenever there was a place that was in need within an hour of where I was there. One year that meant I was in a pulpit 28 times as Mr. IT. Because when the coach called up and said, "Your number, go," I went. Being ready to respond, ready to be that answer, ready to fill that gap is part of it. Being ready. Doing the things to get ourselves ready. Is bench warming getting ready? No. We've got to take an active part. Fruit of the Spirit. Is working and growing in the fruit of the Spirit getting ourselves ready? Nod your head, yes, it is. Because that kind of person is going to have an impact. Because people will be able to see it and go, whoa, that's the kind of person I want to be with. They're the kind of person I can respect. There's something different about them. Be ye holy as I am holy. God wasn't wasting his breath, and neither was Jesus. We take up our cross and follow. It begins when we take his son on in baptism. It continues every single day. When if we first get up, the first thing we do is say, "Lord, this is yours. Show me the opportunity. Open my eyes to that person who needs to hear, hey, I'm there for you. Because when they believe that, when you say, hey, I know you're just a cashier and I buy groceries here on a regular basis, but you're a good person. I would feel bad if I never told you that there's something really important in life, and it's what comes after it as well. If you're interested, I'd like to do a Bible study with you. Is that easy? No, it's uncomfortable until we work at it and it becomes our comfort zone. Is it easy in a workplace? No. But I've told multiple employees that I work with that are on the staff, you know I'm a minister. You've always known I've got a faith. If there's a time you want to talk about God in a serious way, my door is always open. I can only say that because I've lived a life before them that they can look at and know, yeah, Rich is not joking when he says he's a Christian. I see that in him. He's not the one swearing. He's not the one talking about whatever office is. It's a TV program or something, I don't know. I haven't seen it. He's not the one joking or laughing at the off-color jokes, because I don't think it's funny. Taking up our cross is taking and making the choice to be the difference and to look for the opportunities to show it even more. If you need to take on Christ in baptism or you need the prayers of the church, you're welcome to come as we stand and sing.